As we explained in previous session that object-oriented systems are the systems that are built using the concept of classes and objects. So this type of systems is composed of many classes that are related to each other. We can distinguish between two types of relationship between classes in a system. The first type is called composition. This type also of relationship can be called has a relationship. The second type of class relationship is called inheritance, which also can be called is a relationship. Now let's in this session talk about the composition relationship between classes. Composition between two classes can be defined as a class has members reference to objects of other classes. For example, assume we have a class called date that has three data members: day, month, year, and we have another class called employee. The employee has ID of the employee, name, and hire date. Hire date is a data member of the class employee, but this data member is an object of type date. So the relationship between class employee and class date is called composition because employee class has a data member which is an object of type date.
Now let's just implement the concept of composition between class date and class employee. So class date is a simple class. It has three data members: day, month, year, all of them of type integer, and it has a constructor that receives three integers to initialize the three data members. We just here made simple validation, so the day between should be between 1 and 31, and the month between 1 and 12, and we don't have any condition on the year. This class has set methods and get methods, beside a method print that will print the members of the date, day, month, year, separated by slash. Class employee, on the other hand, has ID, name, and hire date. Hire date, of course, as we just said, is an object of type date. The constructor in this class receives three arguments: I of type integer to initialize the ID, string of to initialize the name of the employee, and it receives an object of type date to initialize the hire date of the employee. This class also has set get methods beside a method called display. The display method will just print out the ID, the name, and the hire date. And as we can see, the hire date is printed by calling the method print of the object hire date object, which is of type date. Now let's just create an object of type employee and see how we can pass the date data to the class employee. So okay, in this third class employee test, we will create an object of type employee. Remember that employee constructor receives three arguments: integer to represent the ID, string to represent the name of the employee, and an object of type date represents the hire date of the employee. So to create an object of employee, for example, I will call this object E1. We need to pass those three different data. So let's assume this employee number is 1, 2, 3. This is his ID, and the second argument is the string that represents the name of the employee. Okay, let's assume this employee name is Ahmed, and the third parameter for the constructor is an object of type date. So either to create this object before you call the constructor here, or you can create the object at the time of calling the constructor. So we could say new date, and remember the date of the constructor receives three parameters of type integer represent day, month, year. So let's assume this employee hire date was on the 1st of January of 1999. Now okay, in order to pass, it's three parameters, it's not one parameter, so we need to separate them by comma. Now we have an employee. To print the data of the employee, we call the method display of this object. And let's just run this program. Okay, so these are the data of this employee, and this is how the date is printed. Remember, the date is printed by calling the method print of the object higher date, which is of type date. So this is implementation of the composition between the class employee and class date. Remember also, this relationship is called has a. So the employee has a higher date, which is of type date.